Hello everyone, I'm Ann Walsh, and on behalf of Mission Mobility, let me thank you for joining us today for the webinar, The Ultimate Plan B, Guardian. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to address. For those of you who have not attended a webinar before, all of our attendees are on automatic audio mute, so no need to mute your phones. Those of you who logged into our online presentation will notice a toolbar that's on the right-hand side of your screen. You can use that toolbar to adjust your settings, and you can also submit questions to our panelists on that toolbar. Okay, to start us off, I'd like to introduce you to our expert panelists. We have Steve Newell, Mission Mobility's President and CEO, Tom Morgan, the Vice President of Engineering, and our moderator today will be Andy Young, a first responder from Loudoun County, Virginia's Fire and Rescue Squad. Without any further ado, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Andy.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us today. One of the things about this product that's so exciting is, as first responders, I'm very interested in the Guardian solution. So I'm going to jump right into it and start asking some questions that affect specifically first and second responders. For anyone who may not know exactly what a second responder is, the second responders are our National Guard members and our FEMA-trained community emergency response teams, or faith-based organizations, or just volunteers in the area willing to help. These are the people that we see during these events, and they're critical to helping us recover. So we're very excited about hearing how Guardian is going to help those folks communicate. Guardian is the ultimate plan B, and one of the challenges that every incident commander faces on large and small events is communications. The communications failures during larger events, we've seen them really complicate the issues in the worst way. And had incident commanders been able to communicate better, they would have found themselves with many more assets and resources. So when we're talking about the Plan B, we are talking about cascade failures when the cellular networks or the macro networks fail. We're talking about structural and infrastructure failures. We're talking about lack of scalability, when the infrastructure, the communication infrastructure, is outstripped by the need, people coming into that area. We see unpredictable power, generators not existing, or they're not fueled, or they've been damaged by the event, or they're just not there. So we're talking about power, something that's often overlooked. We also have to look at training, particularly when we're considering first responders are using land mobile radios every day. They don't typically have to use these advanced systems because it's not a common event. Our second responders really don't have any training. So we had to consider that when designing and engineering a system. And in the other side, and one of the big things that first responders face is interoperability. We have to be able to talk to our local, state, and federal agencies as they come in to help us out. So that's really important for us, and we're going to talk about that a little bit by using case studies. Now, the first case study that I think is very relevant is 9/11, and it's been something that's been dissected and talked about, but the reason that it's relevant as a first responder for me, and the way that I see Guardian helping out if that situation were to ever occur again, is very, very important to me. During 9/11, we saw cascade failures. We saw first responders not able to communicate with their incident commanders. We saw incident commanders not able to communicate with the local population, and chaos ensued. These systems were we just weren't prepared for that. Now, I was a first responder in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon at the time, and I saw many of the same problems there. I saw military resources trying to be combined with municipal resources, state resources, and federal resources, as well as a surge of community volunteers who just rushed to the area, but those resources could not be adequately used because nobody could communicate on the same platform. So 9/11, was a horrific event, and it was huge, but since 9/11, we really haven't seen an attack on the United States like that. So if we were to look at a less sensational event, just as horrific, Fort Hood, we would probably be drawn into where 9/11 was days and days of management and expanded into weeks and months. Fort Hood happened in less than an hour. And what we saw when we looked at the cellular network, particularly with Verizon in the area, we saw that only 24 minutes after the first shots had been fired, that the cellular network started to fail. The more that the cellular network started to fail, it was only at 51% of its capacity, the faster it failed. Eventually, cellular network and data was lost. Now, at Fort Hood, like a lot of other places in the United States, first responders have come to rely on cellular technology, macro networks, IP-based solutions, and commercial IP-based solutions to leverage their assets and manage their time. So how does Guardian fix that problem? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. When we look at scalability, these evolutions, and I've talked about a small evolution with Fort Hood measured in minutes, and I've talked about a larger evolution measured in really months. The ability for any piece of equipment to scale up and down for the incident commander is really crucial. Now, in the Fort Hood situation, that happened very quickly, and it was a local event, and it was contained. 9/11, we were spread over multiple cities. We had a lot of assets and resources. So the Guardian system can be combined with other Guardian systems, what I've seen, and can expand and contract as needed to those issues. And it gives the incident commander a great amount of flexibility. Now, in the case of Hurricane Sandy, it's recent, we continue to see communication issues. One of the issues that we saw was not just a communications failure, but because this was a long event, we saw power problems, and we saw people on the news standing around charging cell phones and laptops and iPads and all these other things. And so the Guardian solution also has the ability to offer sustainable power. And I've asked, I'd asked Tom to tell us a little bit more about, the power capabilities of the Guardian system.
Absolutely. One of the important things that's often overlooked when we go to respond or to assist in the response of a major incident like this is power. We've become complacent in our use of power. We just expect it to be there. It's only when it's not available that we begin to reach out and I guess go into a panic mode, so to speak. So we were trying to be proactive in designing this solution. It has internal battery capacity so that it can power itself for several hours. We have the ability to interface with external power sources, whether they are in vehicles, hooking directly to batteries, external batteries, or solar blanket type technology to aid in providing the power for this solution. You know, it's amazing that power can obviously be so critical. I mean, even communications can't run without it. And I just wanted to say thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I'm sure there's an emergency that you could be attending to at the moment, but thanks for joining us today. Okay.
It's really my pleasure. This is a very important product for first responders. So this is definitely worth it. So, you know, from a first responder perspective, we have to think about training. You deliver us the right solution and it's overly complicated, we can't use it. It's very hard for us to employ that piece of equipment. So what we found with the Guardian system is that basically, if you can open a suitcase and operate a telephone, you can deploy this piece of equipment. I think that flat learning curve is crucial for first and second responders. And the fact that it's deployable, it's not very heavy. It's self-sufficient with its battery power on board, so you don't have to go hunting for power right away. This is a really important piece of the Guardian solution, is the flat training. So you know, I'd say that's been very well engineered, and your team deserves a lot of credit for that. So that takes me into the Sandy Hook School, and you know, it's another horrific event, but like Fort Hood, we measured it in minutes, not in hours or days. At Sandy Hook, we saw you know, an active shooter scenario in a very small town, small building, and you know, this is an area where everybody seems to know everybody else, and that would include the police. The police response from the local side was very fast, and from the state police side was also very fast. But what we learned, and this is how we build and engineer better things, is we look at what happened. And what I'm going to play for you is a very short clip of the radio traffic, unedited, and it shows the Connecticut State Police trying to help the Newtown Police establish a perimeter around the school, and it shows the confusion because the state police, although they can see the Newtown Police, they have to call back to their dispatch station, which has to call the Newtown Police dispatch station. They basically had to coordinate all of their efforts over telephone, over a cellular network and a land mobile radio network. This complexity was really hard, and we're going to play it for you right now.
I have Newtown on the line yet. Newtown on the line, so we're coordinating with them. They may just want us to establish a perimeter or whatever. Roger.
So there was a lot more to that tape than you heard, and like I said, the police were doing the best job they could with the equipment that they had, and so were the fire and rescue and emergency medical people. But the bottom line is they don't have the right tools. And you know, over a decade after 9/11, you know, we're still seeing this struggle. So this engineered solution is really an important factor, even for small towns or even state emergency operations centers. So I really am excited about the ability for that to be deployed easily, and it's cost effective. It's a big deal. Now, another concern that we have as first responders is flexibility. We don't know what we're walking into a lot of times. And so when we talk about different communication systems, what we want to know about is, you know, we've got all of these different radio systems. Our neighbors, our municipal neighbors, our state agencies, or even, you know, if the National Guard were to show up or whoever, we have to be able to connect them together. That level of flexibility is supported by Guardian. And Tom, I would just ask you, you know, how does that work?
Well, it's actually very interesting. And as we look at the first responder community, here in Hampton Roads, it quickly became a kind of a personal quest for us as a company to develop something that was easy to use, that allowed you as a first responder to focus on your mission of saving lives and rescuing those. It's very personal to us. And the way we do that, there are several ways to allow the interoperability. We can talk over different radio systems. For example, if a group of first responders that were firemen were to come into an area to respond to the fires that are happening after a hurricane moves through and tornadoes rip up the gas lines and the transformers and so forth, and they need to coordinate with the police officers to prevent potential looting or other current problems in the area, and rescue and medical personnel. They all have different ways of communicating. So what we were thinking was that we'd bring the ability to take those radios together into a common platform and convert them to IP, which is the protocol that the internet runs on. And through IP, we could combine those radios, which would normally not be able to talk to each other. And now we can put them in talk groups, allowing a fire chief to talk to a police chief, to talk to doctors. For example, if a fireman, they know first aid, but there could be a serious injury that they encounter out there. And there's a doctor available on the network that can provide his expertise and directly to that first responder in order to save that life, which otherwise would be impossible. So it's very important in the mission of saving lives to be able to be interoperable. The more coordination we believe you can have on site, the more lives can be saved.
So in the case of a supporting agency coming onto a scene to help with a fire or a search and rescue, how, hooking their radio system up to the host radio system is fairly simple, straightforward?
Absolutely. We hook it up to an E&M or a 4-wire interface, and that radio and anything it talks to on the RF in the spectrum, the radio waves, if you will, is now converted to IP and able to be understood and received by those who are on different frequencies or different mediums, even cell phones or voice over IP phones. They can all be part of the same talk group.
So you could connect the citizen first responder to the fire chief?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes, that's the intent of this.
Okay. So our communication vectors have just expanded tremendously, but they can still be all managed by the incident commanders on scene.
Absolutely. And again, as I mentioned, it became very personal to us that as many lives as possible could be saved. And in order to do that, they should focus on the mission they were trained for. They should not have to be communications personnel, put on that second hat and begin to troubleshoot a communications network.
Sure.
So this unit actually will help them manage that infrastructure for them.
Well, okay, so we're talking about infrastructure. We're going to talk a little bit about product life cycle and money, because that's important, because agencies have to get the most out of a piece of equipment they can. This piece of equipment, the product life cycle, I understand is 5+ years, depending on how things are going. It can sit in a trailer like an emergency communications cache. It could be banged around in a truck or a fire engine or a police car, or even the fire service. You can sort of visualize them, I guess, almost putting these on pallets and dropping them out of the sky, I guess. So this is a pretty durable piece of equipment. It's serviceable. And in my review of the equipment, this has got a lot of parts in it that are replaceable if there were a problem. And I know that later we're going to talk about serviceability and so forth. But my big concern right now is with FirstNet coming on board, nationwide first responder network, how is Guardian going to be future-proofed for that?
That's an interesting question. Our approach in designing and developing the Guardian solution was to make ourselves a translation point, if you will. We don't know 5 years from now what the technologies will be that are released into the market. However, we do know that certain mechanisms for connecting those technologies will still be there. For example, when USB came out years ago, it transitioned from version 1 to 1.1 to 2.0 to now to 3.0. We know that that's going to be around a while. And by using the technology like that, we're able to connect in future standards almost dynamically. A new 4G or an LTE device or whatever a 5G device in the future might bring on a future network like the LifeNet or whatever these other networks or initiatives will be to bring first responders together, we would be able to interface with those technologies. So this is almost future-proofed in a sense with our ability to interface with future technologies in that manner.
Well, that sounds great. So, then that's a great time for us to start talking about, service and support. How does Mission and Mobility plan to do that? Because as FirstNet comes online and first responders, second responders face these new challenges, what's going to happen with Mission Mobility? And I have to point straight to the president of Mission Mobility, Steve. Can you help us with that?
Well, thanks for pointing at me there, Andy. Appreciate what you've been able to illustrate about Guardian thus far. We back up the Guardian with our standard 24-hour-a-day network operations center, and we've got service engineers on the line who are always at the ready to provide assistance. We understand the needs of people that deploy and respond to crises, and we offer training and train-the-trainer training to help them understand our products to a higher degree. But truthfully, with Guardian, the operation is straightforward. Typically a short familiarization video is all that you need to set up the system, turn it on, and it just works. If we required formal training of the device, it would kind of hinder the mission for the folks that need to use it. So we've kept it simple. It's got easy-to-use tools to help get you up and running, and of course we're there to help you get it interoperable with the equipment that you currently have. So it's that's the kind of methodologies that we put into using the Guardian. But we've been in this business for a while. I mean, since 2001, we've been at the forefront of fielding deployed communication suites. We helped invent technology like this in conjunction with the Joint Forces Command, and have since we've been able to help people reach back to their home networks. Today we've taken that same expertise and we fashioned Guardian. It's a communication solution that was built around the needs of first responders and who need to stay in touch with all those connecting elements during a call to action. So we've been doing this singular mission of providing deployed communication systems for the last decade and then some. And we've delivered thousands of these ruggedized terminals to users who daily have them in the harshest environments on the planet. So we can see the same needs and utility that we've provided to the DoD over the last dozen years, and we've just adapted it for use in the emergency response community who needed to operate just as reliably, but with less acumen associated with comm systems. I mean, turn it on, make it work. That's the market need we saw, and that's the one we answered. So I hope that gives everybody some indication of the thought we've put into Guardian, and with that, I'll turn it back to Andy to help summarize how we see the ultimate Plan D and first responder communications. Thanks, Andy.
Well, thank you very much. So, what we've seen is, I guess, the tremendous, flexibility Guardian offers right now. This is a solution that's available right now. I know that it's still being worked, enhancements and future, and it's going to keep growing, right, Tom?
That's right.
Okay. And so, Guardian gives us that bridge between what we have now and what we might have tomorrow, and that's a great advantage. So I guess what I'd really like to know is I'd like to hear some questions. You've answered a lot of my questions, so let's maybe hear some questions from some folks online.
Okay, great. If you'd like to submit a question, you can go ahead and use the question and answer tool that's on the toolbar on the side of your screen. Let's see, we'll just start taking questions from the audience. The first one is, what are the advantages of using this kit over just plugging a laptop into a satellite terminal like BGAN?
Well, the advantage of using this is it consolidates the overhead and security into a single platform that allows access to any number of services that are required for an incident response. We wanted to ensure that, again, people did not have to be experts on troubleshooting their own connection. So the ability to have this box manage your connectivity, including the security, back to that service delivery point or to the local services that are being shared in a disaster response area would be handled, within the unit.
So, Tom, I have to ask a basic question. If I want to hook my laptop computer into my satellite terminal, my own personal satellite terminal, like the BGAN is a popular terminal. There's other ones, but that's a popular one.
Sure.
Guardian comes with a satellite terminal built into it as an option and a feature. But I don't want to talk to, on incident, I don't want to use that valuable airtime, satellite airtime. It's very expensive to talk to my captain who's just around the other side of a house. It seems kind of ridiculous to go all the way to a satellite to talk to a guy that I can see. So will Guardian allow me to have a local area network for my assessment teams, and then I can use my over-the-horizon capability to bring resources and communicate, reports and assessment reports?
Yes, it absolutely does that. It's been designed to find the most efficient path to the necessary destination for the traffic. So if your captain or chief is just a few blocks away or just around the next corner, you would not have to go through the satellite system. If this capability were configured to allow all of them to interoperate locally, you could have a couple of satellite terminals for redundancy purposes in this network, and when it was necessary to update some command headquarters that is off-site or out of the region, it would do so.
That's great. Okay, so it's fast and it saves money.
Yes, it does.
Okay, that's what we want to know.
Okay, I see that we have a related question here from someone else. Do you provide the SATCOM?
Was that referring to the SATCOM services?
Yes, the SATCOM services. Do you provide the SATCOM services?
The answer is yes. Yes, we can provide the SATCOM services as well.
So Mission Mobility has a relationship with a satellite provider, so you can arrange all that, take care of it.
We have relationships with several satellite providers,
wonderful.
so we can facilitate those as well.
That's great.
Okay, we've got another one here. Can I plug any radio into this kit and make it an IP radio? What if I have VHF and UHF radios in the field? Can they work together through this system?
They absolutely can. They all have their 4-wire interfaces, and that's what's necessary. A 4-wire cable that goes to an RJ45 4-wire or E&M interface, and the codec and so forth is built into our unit that converts that to IP, and we can control which talk groups those radios become members of. So yes.
So Tom, just to talk to it on a first responder level, what you're saying is my P25 radio that I carry every day, And if I run into another first responder as a different talk group or a different radio, and he also has a radio that has that serial connection, we can talk to each other.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. I have another question about the phones. I see there are phones in the kit. What is the range of the wireless phones?
Okay, the wireless phones that you see in that kit have a range of several hundred meters. They are made for a network operations center or an incident operations center, an IOC of some sort, so that people can roam, a reasonable distance away and stay connected locally. However, they can be expanded. The phone types can change. The interfaces those phones are plugged into are not, tied specifically to that phone and that type or model of phone. It's very flexible. You could even, use high wattage type, Wi-Fi phones in this as well in VoIP, and be able to set up the dial plans in such a way that your VoIP phones are talking to the wireless phones, and even amongst the kits locally out there in the field in the incident center.
So, Tom, again, I'm going to bring it a little bit down to the first responder level. Are you saying that there are phones in the Guardian kit where, for an emergency operations center ad hoc, just kind of in a tent, you can just pop this box open and now I've got my emergency operations center? I can put my people online and collaborate?
That's correct, yes.
Will those phones talk back through the satellite or a network? Or
They absolutely will.
so you can make regular phone calls?
Yes.
And you can receive regular phone calls?
Yes.
That's amazing. I think that's an understated feature of the Guardian system. That's pretty neat.
Well, thanks
Thank
for bringing that up then.
Thank you.
So another question about the kit. What is the battery runtime for the whole system?
Well, that depends on several factors. Obviously, the battery technology itself is, lithium-ion polymer. So it operates ideally in a certain temperature range. Once we go over about 95 degrees to 100 degrees, it begins to degrade a little bit, but we get anywhere from 2 to almost 4 hours inside the box of runtime. And if you have a solar blanket, that can extend it up to over 12 to 14 hours. If you plug that into another external power source that can, of course, sustain the communications and charge the batteries, then you're not really using them. So they are in reserve until you run out of that external power source. So it all depends. I mean, there are variables, but it's pretty significant, I think, when you go into stand up. If you're a first responder, and Andy, you can confirm this, but it's important that you immediately can establish your communications and sustain that for a few hours until somebody else brings another source of some type in there.
Well, you bring up a good point about power. So my incident commanders have cell phones. Can they charge them with the Guardian kit?
They can. There's a USB port on there that they can charge their cell phones as if they were at home with normal power.
Wow.
So they plug their USB cable in and they're good to go.
That's a great feature. Thank you.
Well, we're almost out of time, but we have time for one more question. Can this system be used on the move?
It absolutely can be used on the move. Yes, it can. The system is made to operate over satellite, cellular technologies, Wi-Fi. You can plug it physically into a cable. That wouldn't help you much on the move. But a cellular network, if there was a macro type network in the area, and you could be on the move and be able to continue to communicate. Another thing it would allow you to do is communicate with other local Guardian kits while you're on the move if there was not a local macro cellular network to connect to, if they're not brought online yet.
So if I had my hotspot turned on my phone, my personal phone, Guardian could use it?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. Any additional questions can be submitted to info@m-guardian.com, and we will be, in the next week or so, following up with each of you to send you a link to the recording of this event as well as the question and answers in written form. Thank you very much. Have a great day.